everybody. I hope this is going to be a facilitated conversation about social enterprise. And I'll lead us through a few things today. First of all, thinking about, well, what are social enterprises? And for some of you, you'll know all of that. So bear with us as we go through that, and you can chip in on it as well. And then to think about social enterprises in practice, and Matt, who I've got to know over the last year from Grace Enterprises, is going to tell us about what he's been doing in Nottingham, and unpacking that a little bit for us. And then we'll think about a town, city, region-wide approach to a thriving social economy, which is what we've been seeking to start to address here in Ipswich. And I would say that actually we're in very early days. So bear with us, we'll share with you what we're learning, and I'm hoping that I will learn as well. That's the whole point of these learning communities, is that this will spark a conversation, engage you in that conversation, and we can all learn from one another. Sound like a good plan? Great, good stuff. Okay, so what are social enterprises? Well, they're businesses which trade for a social or environmental purpose. So they have as a main purpose in their identity that actually there's social impact or environmental impact. And they demonstrate a better way to do business, a more balanced way to do business that prioritizes benefit to people and to the planet, and plows back a lot of their profit into the mission of the enterprise. Because of their nature, because they're having social benefit, then actually they can be really instrumental in reducing poverty, economic inequality, improving social justice, adding to environmental sustainability. And interestingly, there are more than 100,000 social enterprises in the UK contributing 60 billion to the economy and employing around 2 million people. And they're part of a wider social economy. So the social economy would include mutuals, building societies, as well as social enterprises, and charities that are trading as well would be part of the wider social economy. So why should churches be interested? Well, first of all, social enterprises make people's lives better in a sustainable economic way, not only in terms of for the employees, but also for the environment in which they're working. Secondly, there are many people working for the common good who are working for social impact and social benefit, with whom we might partner to improve the lives of our communities. It's a great talking point to engage with other people who are engaged in bringing significant difference in your community. It enables us to be yeast, to be salt and light, and also it's a way that we can work together for the thriving of the town, of the city. And naturally, in these situations, when we're engaging in conversations with people and working with them, then it can lead to faith-based conversations. I was really struck by this pioneer spectrum from the Church Mission Society, which is really, really interesting, I think, which talks about the different types of pioneers, from church replicators who take an existing model of church and start it in a new place. So that might be a HTV church plant, which they take from one place and put into a new place, to pioneers who adapt existing methods like messy church, cafe church, and apply it in a different fresh expression, to pioneers who start venturing and innovating, and maybe they run forest church or green church, or they have a running church, or they're doing something new that hasn't been done before in their environment. And then actually on the right hand side there, what they call pioneer activists in their language, but actually pioneers who venture into the broader space to influence and transform it in the name of Christ. So really interesting, I think, to see, you know, a mission society thinking about how do pioneers work, and actually recognizing that social enterprise can be a real way of actually engaging in bringing light and hope and truth into our communities and into our environment. So that's a little bit about what social enterprises are. I'm going to hand over to Matt now, and he's going to talk through his experience of grace enterprises and starting real social enterprises in Nottingham. So Matt, over to you.
Thanks, Simon. You're very kind. And are you controlling my slides?
I am, yes. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, great to be with you. And I'm in a very strange room at the National Food and Drink Summit. And I've snuck off and told Simon I'd managed to do it. So I've got my name badge on and all sorts. So it's a bit of a strange day. But we are based in Nottingham. And this, as you can see from that, transforming lives through supportive employment in our sustainable businesses is what sums up everything we try and do. So transforming lives through supportive employment in our businesses. And as I'll go on to tell you in a moment, that's doing it with the church based here in Nottingham. So there are pros and cons of that. And I certainly don't want in this next 10 minutes to just tell you it's really easy. And here are some amazing stories. I could tell you some awful ones as well. But we have seen overall employing well over 100 people, loads of lives changed for good, and the church become more relevant. So let's go. What's on the next slide? So yeah, the inspiration for this, we go all the way back to 2006. So I'm in Nottingham, primary school teacher. My wife's a doctor. So we're perfect missionary material, doing our Christian bit in very worthy careers, but actually went to Kenya for 3 months for her medical elective, thinking, will God call us overseas? But didn't feel called. But what we did feel called to do, or were inspired by, right at the end, went to see the Kambakia Christian Center, so a church in Kenya that was part of New Frontiers. And actually, it was amazing. So we're seeing people saved and added and employed. And I thought this was amazing. That in an area that was poor on a map, and you'd think there'd be a load of aid being coming into the area, actually was reaching out, doing famine outreach stuff. They were building a police station, a hospital, a school, all sorts of things. It was amazing. And that's because they were running businesses. So I came away inspired. On the next slide is what I did. So very dramatic call. The next year felt like God called me on a Saturday to be an employer. So I handed my notice in on a Monday, and that was to be an employer. So like, how am I going to do that? I start a gardening business. So called it Fruitful Oaks. You may be able to see, if you've got really good eyesight and a big screen, that it's Isaiah 61 verse 3 at the bottom of that. And so there aren't many Bible verses on vans at builders merchants at 7:30 in the morning on a Monday, driven by middle-class people like me. So it was a really interesting mission field. But talking about the people being called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. And what we did was gardening. So employed a lot of guys, people who'd been in prison, homeless, struggled with addiction, all the barriers you can think of, and did it through gardening. But actually, I had a real passion for doing it with the church, because that's where I'd seen in Kenya. But actually, the church had said no to me. This is 2007. So I got on with it, did it for 10 years without church, but gladly this story does end up with church in a moment. And because it was never about the gardening, I suddenly realized I'd become the problem. We need to see other businesses employing other people, but I wasn't employing a single mum because it had grown into sort of landscaping and decking and driveways. How was I going to employ the former addict who maybe they're in their 50s and they can't do a whole day's digging? It's like, actually, and it was quite hard to scale. It was too centered on me. So I realized I was the bottleneck. And because God called me to be an employer and not a gardener, it was very easy to lay it down and say, let's do something else. So the next slide is, this is where we are in Nottingham. So Grace Church, which just so happens to be in an old job centre. So as you might be able to see on the left, Ministry of Labour Employment Exchange, which is a nice touch. And Simon's been and visited us. So therefore, seeing this old building that used to be a job centre now be a church and somewhere you can get employment, suddenly it's very relevant in our society. But this is 2017. So I've just done 10 years gardening at this point, always saying to the church, I think we should do it together. I think we should do it together. But 2017, put together a fresh proposal, went to the elders, leadership had changed, circumstances had changed. Let's be honest, I was 10 years older and hopefully a fraction more mature. I'd got a bit of experience. I wasn't just a teacher having a midlife crisis early. The need for help had increased. Food banks had taken off between 2007 and 17. So that need to do more than just the relief work that church is good at, more than a night shelter, more than a food parcel. How can we be relevant in society? How could we be Jesus's hands and feet, that yeast, the light, pick whichever one you want. But actually, if we were employers, we would be very relevant every day of the week and not just on Sundays. So that's what we did. The next slide is, so this is the Grace Enterprises logo, but effectively, and the strap line I read before, but the way we do things is summed up. And if I go around very quickly from red, and I'll go around clockwise. So creating opportunities for people with major barriers to work, doing it through business, so we can pay everyone the real living wage. It's scalable, replicable. We don't just give people a job though, because someone that's been a long time unemployed, it's not just as if throwing a job at them will fix everything. We support people. That might be mentoring, English lessons, debt advice, whatever it is to support people. And then guess what? We see a change, which we then measure. We've got qualitative stories, we've got quantitative numbers. And actually then what we see is huge influence and increasing. So that can be conversations about women's toilets on construction sites or about modern slavery, all kinds of places that I end up in a conversation, but not believing that we've got all the answers. So actually doing stuff in partnership, whether that's with a homeless charity or with addiction services, NHS. We've got loads of people that partner with us, either referring people into us or in helping us get work or even taking employees off us. So that's our model. The next slide is just for a bit of context. These are the kind of people we're employing. So yeah, as you can see, about a quarter have been homeless, refugees 14% and rising fast. You can see the types of barriers. So kind of people that you would be used to on the fringes of your church, or to be honest, hopefully in your churches, but also definitely in the communities that you're part of. So, and mental health always increasing at the moment, and 40% of people long-term unemployed. So the government says long-term is 6 months. We're talking about 40% have been out of work for a year or more. So needing some kind of major intervention. So it's brilliant to be able to give someone a job, support them, and really see a difference. The next slide is, if everything I've talked about is what we do, this is how we do it. So we currently run 3 different businesses. The first one we started is Radiant Cleaners. So just to clarify, stop the gardening. So to be able to start these new things with the church. So Radiant Cleaners employs about 30 people. We've won at the Social Enterprise of the Year Awards. So in no way do I want you to think social enterprise is naff, second rate, these do-gooders who aren't very good at what they do. Like, number one's got to be excellence. We are going to be great at what we do. If Jesus ran a cleaning company, what would it look like? Well, it would be great at cleaning, but that wouldn't be its primary purpose. And that's the kind of attitude we try and go with. So excellence is really important, but then, so it's the and we do the social stuff as well, rather than we're really lovely people, we may or may not clean for you. So it has to be that way around because it's a business, first and foremost, that then chooses to be social. The second business we started in 2022 is not what you'd expect coming off a cleaning business. So anyone that knew me as Matt from Radiant Cleaners was surprised that I was now starting an events business, so marquee hire. But I would say, oh, really? I was never Matt from Radiant Cleaners. It's not about that. It's about how do we transform lives through supportive employment. The first vehicle was cleaning. The second vehicle, marquee hire. You can imagine the people putting up marquees are different and different to the people cleaning on a construction site or in an office every day of the week. So it's different people working in a team outdoors. And I'd be really passionate that different businesses create different jobs for different people. So that was our second. And then if you're trying to guess what comes next, you probably wouldn't pick biscuits. So, but again, if it's actually about people and employing them and scalable, replicable businesses, then why not? And as it says in the middle, it's not about the biscuit. And I probably could have had a slide on the last one saying it's not about the marquee and it's not about the cleaning. It's about the people. And that is why, and that's why I'm here today, why I'm at the food and drink place. But actually talking about our biscuits is like, if they're asking us, what's different about your biscuit? I'll be like, nothing really. It's not about that. The reason why you're going to work with us and our biscuit is because we're seeing lives transformed through the people we've got baking them, packing them, and involved in the process. So some amazing stories. And again, different people employed in our little bakery than would be employed putting up a marquee, than would be employed in our cleaning business. And so currently we've got about 30 people working in the cleaning business, about 10, although it's a bit seasonal clearly, for the marquee business, and 10 and increasing in this one that we only started 6 or 7 months ago. So those are the 3 businesses. I'm not sure what the next slide is, so it's a pure guess. Right, here we go. But holistic. So when we talk about supportive employment, it really is not about the work itself. So we do have that on there, and this is our measure. So we do reviews with everybody at 0 months, so when they're starting, but also at 1 month and at 7, and so every 6 months after that. And essentially, this is a conversation starter. So if you're a church leader thinking, this is the kind of thing we use for discipleship, that's exactly the word that we would use in the Christian world, not when we're in business, but it's the same thing, isn't it? So how do you feel about, and no one's ever said to me, thank you for making me a better cleaner. What people have said to me is this job's given me hope, it's given me purpose, it's given me dignity. My life has changed because of this job, but it isn't the work base, just the vehicle, it's just a job. But actually we see people's increases in all kinds of these areas, and Living Life Index, named after John 10:10. So living life to the full. We measure all these things out of 10 as well, but actually it's a tool that we can use to start a conversation and to see with people whose lives, let's be honest, are pretty damaged at times. Actually, they might be giving themselves a 2 out of 10 for hope. And the next 6 months later, they might be having a really rubbish time and they're giving themselves 4 out of 10 for hope. But actually referring it back to where they were can be really helpful to start a conversation. Also trying to empower people rather than statement-based approach that says, well, you're objectively, your life is better than it was. You've moved from a 6 to a 7. It's like, how do you feel about it? Which also means everyone in our team can do it, including me. So I would do my review about how am I feeling about hope and autonomy and housing and everything else at the moment. So this is what we use as our tool. The next slide is about the people. So really everything I've just talked about this is what we do, this is how we do it. But in terms of a few lives changed and stories, as we sort of bring this into land, would be, we do things differently. So one of the photos at the top is us at 10-pin bowling. So we're the cleaning company that goes 10-pin bowling with all of our team and also provides English lessons and debt counselling and all the other things that any normal cleaning company will not. That social was deliberately put 2.5 hours or 2 or 3 hours before our Christmas carol service at church. So quite naturally, we were going 10-pin bowling with our friends who we work with. And then afterwards, when people were saying, well, where are you going next? We were like, we're going to church. Do you want to come with us? And a bunch of people who have absolutely no interest in church from their point of view. And they are not walking down the street saying, I've got this hole in my heart and it's a Jesus-shaped hole. Please tell me about him. Actually, find church very relevant because we're their employer. It doesn't look like a church, and they don't understand, why would a church start a business? And if it did start a business, why would it employ me? I don't believe this stuff. I've just told you I don't believe this stuff, and you're still giving me a job. And that's exactly what we do. Another photo, the other top photo would be 2 people, both just about 60, and we took them to London for the Social Enterprise of the Year Awards. But actually, the fact is that they were there when they got to see the Houses of Parliament, London Eye, first time ever. And 6 of us in that marquee photo, again, some have been to university there and got degrees. Others have been in prison, been homeless, struggled with addiction, mental health crises, refugee, all sorts of different things. But actually that common purpose and identity really makes a difference. The next one, Simon, because I think we're coming in, would be, Bill worked for us. He'd been unemployed for 35 years. And one of the ways it works with church would be he first came to church for a food parcel. So I'm not saying churches shouldn't do food parcels. They absolutely should. But actually, how can we do more? So he joined us as a church. He became part of it, came to know Jesus, got baptized, started working for us. Amazing story. And he'd been unemployed for 35 years. He'd never had a job. he was 52. So it's phenomenal. What's really interesting is 6 weeks later, his son came and knocked on my door, and he was saying, do you think I could have a job as well? So all it had taken was 6 weeks where the spark in his dad's eye, or the light, or he'd seen a difference. This is someone who had left school at 15 with no qualifications, had never even thought about working. It just wasn't in his remit. He wasn't thinking about working. He'd never seen anyone work. 6 weeks of his dad working, and he's asking for a job. So there we see, and he'd also become a Christian in that process as well. So these are some of the best stories, but the relevance of the church making a difference. It's the way that people come to us, the route in, but also some of our employees then start asking questions about faith. It's also with the mentoring and the coaching that people can provide. So we pair them up with people in the church. How can they get alongside and actually make a difference, standing between employer and employee, but like getting alongside that one another ring, or discipleship, whatever word we want to use. And I think might have 1 or 2 more slides to go. Oh, this one was empty. Yeah. So this, I'm going to read this, but do read it for yourself if that's better than listening to me. But there's some phenomenal stuff in this. Like in a little video that I hope we get to show you in June, you will actually hear this guy speak for himself. But essentially the top bit, it's empowering. So there's food banks, there's charities, they do things for you, but this is enabling you to do things for yourself. And then also Anthony saying, look, I was lost, broken, without hope, given up for years. And we're not taking credit for this. He's right when he says, absolutely, and Jesus saved me from that. But then this job helps. It gives that backbone. It helps give a foundation. And talking about Jesus, and saying actually what I was really humbled to hear, of like, this is the way, from his point of view, how Jesus would do stuff, which was really cool. And this is someone who had a very, very low opinion of the church before that. That may, and that is it. There you go. Happy to answer any questions if you want. And happy
Matt,
to clear off.
that was just amazing and so inspirational. And let's just take a few questions for Matt. We want to move on to talk about how you do this on a town-wide basis. But while Matt's here, let's just get some questions for Matt. So maybe put your hand up or just go for it.
I asked a question on the chat actually, but I can do it like this. Matt, I was really interested to see, there's been 2 phases. There's the part where you were doing it yourself, more perhaps entrepreneurially, when the church weren't backing you, and now they are. So I think you touched on it a little bit at the end after I asked the question, but what difference does it make practically that the church are backing it as opposed to when they weren't backing it? Is the church actually the employer, for example?
Okay, so answering the last bit first. So Grace Enterprises is a charitable company limited by guarantee, completely separate from the church legally, but our offices are in the same office. I've just walked up here from the church building. So we're relationally very, very strong with trustees that sit on both boards. So it's relational rather than, and like we rent office space from the church, for example, we rent garage space from them. So that's how that's set up. Was the first part about how it makes difference in the second phase and the first phase?
Yeah, between, because they didn't back it and now they do back it. So practically speaking, what difference does that make?
I think there's a fundamental difference, which is what I was passionate about, of saying, look, I'm a reasonably nice guy who you can probably trust to do your garden well at a fair price. That worked. And people, I think there's definitely a place for Christian tradesmen who are trustworthy, honest, and do a good job. Great. But wouldn't it, this is what I was saying, wouldn't it be a completely different level if instead of it being, there's this nice guy who's doing this nice stuff, which is great, but actually we, the church, suddenly are being, instead of being that irrelevant building down the end of the road, suddenly we're actually going to employ people and be relevant at like the way the church used to do. So actually making a difference, reclaiming some of that territory. And it was deliberate to go into cleaning, whereas an industry where people are treated badly, paid the minimum wage or less, often not employee-centered at all, and saying, what about if we ran a cleaning company and we centered it on the people, paid everyone properly, could we make a difference in society that way? And so then we've carried on that theme into the second and third. And I'd say the reason why people are interested in what we do, let's be honest, the reason why I'm on this call is not because I'm a nice guy who's doing a nice thing. but actually because we've got a church that's doing something impactful, and that's what our church is known for now, and really making a difference.
Right.
Thanks.
Helen, can I come to you next?
Yeah, hello. Thank you. Matt, that was so interesting. I do have a couple of questions. I'm here today from Bolton CBS. We support social enterprises set up in Bolton and Greater Manchester. My question is, I would have never guessed which kind of thematic area was going to come next after you said cleaning, then mackies, then biscuits. And I can't possibly guess what the fourth and next business will be. But can I ask why those areas? Did you like do some kind of market analysis, or is that where your skills lay, or you saw an opportunity another way? Why those areas?
Yeah. So yeah, the last qualification on my CV is primary school teacher. So it's definitely not experience from that point of view. And also, I'm not a massive fan of business plans, to be honest. So I would just go on with it. With the gardening, I was like, well, it's my money, so I can do what I want anyway. So just got on with it and thought, well, if we do it well, it will work. Second time round, the church had backed it and given me a bit of money to seed fund it. So that time around, there needed to be a bit of a business plan, but I think I'd be embarrassed if I looked at it now. But actually, and then third and fourth time round, there's been different people's money doing it in different ways. Things have scaled up every time. So there's been a bit more of a business plan each time. What I found hardest was gardening. I never managed to replicate myself. So I think, right, let's go from doing to managing, do something simpler. Cleaning is fairly straightforward. I could have a guess at, like, we're not doing domestic cleaning now, but we used to. So if you told me your house was a 3-bed semi, I'd be able to guess roughly how much time it would take to clean, for example. Whereas I wouldn't be able to predict how to do your garden from here. So it's simpler business, but the hardest thing then was getting myself out of managing, because I knew everything about everyone and every job. But then having got myself out of it, and that's a whole different story, I thought, I'm not doing that again. So with the events business, instead of it being, I've got an idea, it was finding someone else and doing it jointly with them. And so they were the number one. And actually, if I could lead through them, then I would already have one foot out the door, ready to step on to do the next thing. Because there's a big vision for this, as in we're going to do 7 different businesses, and I could explain why at some point. So you're right to predict the next things. But actually, and then this time round, we were approached by Green Pastures, a national homeless charity, about how could we start a business with them. And we recruited someone, and it's still, the word biscuit hadn't been mentioned, to do something that was scalable, replicable, employed the right kind of people, and so on and so on. But it was absolutely did not have to be biscuits. But actually, Stuart, the co-founder, his experience is in baking. So that would be one of the reasons for doing that. But also there's a gap in the market. You could all think of ethical teas and coffees, I'm sure, various of them. But how many social biscuits can you think of? And that was one of the reasons why we did it. There's a literal gap in the market. Why don't we step into that space? So a combination.
Great. Thanks, Matt. James?
I was sure you were going to say that's just the way the cookie crumbles to that last question. But my question is about how much is social and how much is enterprise. I work a lot with a network of churches and charities across Sandwell. And there seems to be this commonly believed myth that if you're struggling financially to pay for your church roof or to fund your youth ministry, set up a charity shop and all your problems will be solved because you'll be raking in loads of income and can subsidise all the other ministries. And I know that several churches and other projects have tried that and failed to make it successful. So where's the balance for that? And do you rely on a certain proportion of grant funding or donations to sort of make the business float in that social enterprise context?
Yeah. I heard someone say the other day, which I quite like, we're not in business to make a profit, but if we don't make a profit, we're not in business. And I think that sums it up pretty well. So it's not our primary purpose, but I can't stand it when someone says, I'm running this not for profit. It's like, well, it's inherently not scalable or replicable. Then how are you going to grow it? It's going to need someone to subsidize it forevermore. And I love charity. I think it's great, but that's not what we're trying to do here. Having said that, we do have Grace Enterprises is set up as a charity. So some of the mentoring, coaching, support, the holistic bit is from the charity, and we have been able to get some grants to support people in do that supportive bit. And also we've had grants given to us effectively for new things. So people have, when were we going to start a second business out of cleaning business profits in a low profit margin business, paying people more? It would be another 100 years, I think. But actually people could see the impact. And then if we seed funded something, so we have been given money, new money to do new things. Otherwise, things are sustainable. So therefore, the Radiant Cleaners pays all its staff, makes a profit, not a lot. And I wouldn't recommend any church gets anywhere near it if they're thinking it's for the money. Same with Jubilee events. It works, it makes a profit. But again, it's not life-changing sums of money, but it can sustain itself and grow. And then Biscuits has only been going 6 months, so it's too early. But that's got the chance to actually genuinely make a profit, I think, that could be really transformational, because it isn't, it's not bounded by geography like the services. And clearly it's got the chance to scale and replicate, hence one of the reasons we chose it. I don't know if that answers all of your question.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And Helen's also made a comment in the chat, which is really helpful as well.
Okay.
So yes, that does
Right.
help to yeah, thank you.
Right. I'm conscious of time, and Matt, do you need to
Sorry.
go, or are you okay?
I'm actually okay, but you feel free to kick me off, Simon. They've left me in
So-
this quiet room and no one's in it, so it's good.
So I'm going to take Carl and then Jenny and Margaret's questions. We won't have any more questions after that. If we can keep them really brief and to the point, that would be great, because we do want to talk about town-wide and city and region-wide approaches as well before we finish today. So Carl.
Thanks, Simon. I'll be very brief because both of my questions I was going to ask have been answered already, Matt, so well done. But I just want to say this is absolutely brilliant and inspiring, so thank you for that. It's absolutely fantastic. So keep up the great work, and I'll let Margaret say her question now. So well done, mate.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, let's go to Jenny next, actually, and then Margaret. Yeah, okay, Jenny.
I haven't actually got a question, but I've only recently moved to Manchester from Nottingham, and I've seen Grace Enterprises in action, and they are absolutely fantastic. But Matt has worked so hard, and he has had some ups and downs. So I'm sure he would agree with that, but he is just inspirational. So I just wanted to say thank you, Matt.
Oh, thank you.
And Margaret? You're on mute. Oh, yeah, you're off.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah. Well, I'm from rural Scotland, and we're in the churches. The Church of Scotland is in the process of closing 400 and odd churches, and which is really, really sad. But one of the things that we've been looking at, I haven't done anything about locally, is trying to set up some sort of social enterprise to administer carers and people who are, giving care, because trying to get carers to help people stay in their homes instead of going into a care home is almost impossible in a rural community. And I just wondered if you felt if we should maybe actually approach a church to see if we can work in partnership with them.
It's really interesting because I mean, Simon was in Nottingham 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I was saying to him, what I'd really love to see us do is a church-based or somehow a church-enabled social care business, because it is a model that the system right now doesn't work for anyone, whether that's the councils, the employees, or the people getting care. And I don't need to tell you guys that. And I don't have the answer as to how to do it, but what an amazing gospel opportunity it would be. Like what I'm saying about cleaning, but then times that by 10 of being able to care for the least, the last, the lonely in their own homes at difficult times, and doing it from a gospel point of view. And all of your churches will be filled with caring kind of people that it could, if we could employ them well, I don't know how revival comes about, but maybe we could do that and see.
Amazing. Matt, thank you so much. That's been so inspirational, and thank you for taking the time just to join us. And I've been so inspired by your journey and coming to see you and meeting some of the people who are working with you as well, and inspired about what might be possible across the UK and through churches by what you're doing. And thank you for taking the time out of the conference today as well. So I just want
Yeah,
to
great.
share
Thank
a
you.
little with you about what's happened in Ipswich and in Suffolk so far. So this all started for me probably about 18 months ago. I chair Together for Ipswich, which is the church unity movement in Ipswich. And I was sat in a church conference where probably about 14 or 15 little charities, micro businesses got up and shared their story so far of the impact that they were having. One of them was a group working with mums who didn't have access to their children. Another was a group doing coaching of children in primary school. Another one was a group working with young people in care homes. Just incredible. And I happened to be sat next to the Vice Chancellor of Suffolk University, Helen Langton. And I said to Helen, isn't it remarkable? We've got all these amazing people doing wonderful things. How do we help them scale? What would it look like to help them scale and make a difference? And Helen, and my background is I was in BT for 14 years, and as part of that journey in BT was on the corporate venturing side of BT, which was starting new businesses out of an incubator in BT's research and development facility at Adastral Park, just outside Ipswich. So I'd had that experience, and then 14 years of being a chief exec, and then having started my own business. And Helen said, "Oh, that's fascinating, because actually Suffolk is in the lowest 10% of all areas in the country in terms of number of social enterprises and impact of social enterprises. And the university is really concerned about that. So why don't you come and talk to us, and why don't we have a conversation?" So I went with our bishop here and a couple of other members of Together for Ipswich to sit with Helen and her business enterprise director in the university, and to start to think and dream and pray about what it might look like for an Ipswich-wide and then a Suffolk-wide approach to social enterprises that were the churches in partnership with the university and with the councils and with social enterprise east of England, enabling and Suffolk Community Foundation, enabling social enterprises to scale up, have bigger impact and greater reach. And the university facilitated with, and we helped them facilitate, a number of workshops which started to look at, well, what are the needs? What are the social needs in Suffolk? What can we learn from reports that have been done by the council, from reports that have been done by the university, from research that we've done? What are the needs? Where do we need social enterprises to be impactful and evident? What's our theory of change in terms of the key areas that social enterprises could be focused on to make a difference in the community and the society that we're working on? And as a result of that, we formed with these groups the Suffolk Social Enterprise Partnership Board, which has come together and has church representatives on it and has these following aims working together. One is to increase the level and ease of access to investment for social economy in Suffolk. So we're looking at a place-based fund there for social enterprises across the whole of Suffolk that will actually take money and invest in social enterprises. The second is to increase the number of social enterprises in Suffolk. The third, to increase the level of support, training, resources and profile. The fourth, to impact particularly in the areas, and these areas are areas that came out of the theory of change and came out of the work that we did on what are the needs in Suffolk around educational attainment, ageing population, adult social care, interestingly there, Matt, as well, well-being, accessible healthcare, rural and social isolation, rising poverty, housing and homelessness, pressure on achieving net zero. And then interestingly, to increase the participation in social enterprises from marginalized communities and the provision of social enterprise within marginal communities, and then to become a recognized social economy place as well. So going from kind of in the bottom 10% to actually wanting to see a place that has a thriving social economy in which churches can play a fundamental part in shaping that and enabling it to happen across the town. So one of the first initiatives that we did with the university was a Make a Difference social enterprise bootcamp. and we got some funding from the local council. And whereas the university had run this previously for their students and just for their students, and we said to them, how about you throw this open to churches and to wider community members as well? And they did. And last summer we had 4 church members from 4 churches across Ipswich who went and had their ideas for social enterprises worked on over a series of 8 weeks, over 2 months. So one was a lady who wanted to create a community gardening business. I could have sent it to Matt actually to do that. One was a church member who wanted to start a cleaning business. The third was a church member who wanted to start a dance business. And the fourth one was someone who wanted to start a food business. And 2 of the church folks got grants and money out of their presentations and their incubation of their ideas. We're now running this 3 times a year with church people going on it alongside the rest of the community. We have church leaders involved in being mentors for people who are going through this process as well. And now we're looking at an accelerator for the build up of existing social enterprises, as well as an incubator that can help, a boot camp and an incubator that can help social enterprises start. So we're just at the start of our journey here in Suffolk. It's an early start, but I'm really encouraged by a number of factors. One is that you've got so many groups working together. Secondly, that the church is actively involved in that and right at the center of it and participating. And third, that we're starting to see church members who have missional ideas for social enterprises being given the professional support that they need to start up their social enterprises and to scale them as well. So really interesting start here in Suffolk, and I thought you might be encouraged by that. There was a massive open door for us with everyone from the council to the university to social enterprise East of England, and real desire to engage, as well as significant open doors into funding opportunities as well, and creating place-based funds. So any questions on that that we could take? That would be great.
Simon, I feel like I had Simon,
Oh,
I feel like
Helen.
I have 100 questions about that. So I've just popped my email in the chat to you, and I'd really like to have not just because I want to visit Suffolk, because that would be wonderful, but
Suffolk's
just
a
to
wonderful
talk about,
place to visit.
because we're 2 years into a development program up in Manchester for social enterprise. It'd be really interesting to exchange some notes.
Yeah, definitely. Love to do that.
Thank you.
Carl?
Yeah, hi Simon. Just a couple of questions really. It sounds amazing what you're doing as well. Where we're at here at Provision House, we're a local Christian charity that has a real desire to see for justice for people, and we're really supporting those on the edge of poverty. We started doing that by creating home starter packs, and we did a food club, and we've done training as well. But we noticed there was so much more needed for people to progress. They needed somewhere to go. So we're now looking at creating a whole kind of social economy. And what we're looking at being is that kind of group which can just encourage others. We're going to start ourselves, so that can be that kind of model that we can share, but then hopefully moving forward. It just seems to be the way you were working it there, and the collaboration with the different people, the universities and the councils. How easy was that in your kind of estimation, or was that just a real slog to do, or what kind of?
No, we've been knocking at an open door basically, because I think one of the advantages we have is that Suffolk is in the bottom 10% of social enterprise penetration across the country, and there have been stop-start attempts to create an environment in which social enterprises can really thrive over the years, that have suffered from different levels of funding and then funding being withdrawn and new levels of funding and new programs, but no really sustainable approach. And I think we just hit the university at a time when they were applying for civic university status and were seeing themselves very much as a facilitator of civic engagement. And so their involvement, I think the engagement of one anchor institution like that can bring all the other anchor institutions around, and that's really helpful in bringing other people around the table. And they were really open to working with churches and saw the benefit of social enterprises in local communities. So one of the challenges, I think, never underestimate the fact that the councils and universities, etc., once they have it explained to them, really understand the benefit of the reach that we have into every community right across the town and the city and the region. It's something they'd love to have and they don't have. Yeah. So actually bringing that and saying, actually, we can help you reach marginalized communities because we've got church in those places. Yeah. We can get into those places. We can help you do that. Yeah. And there was an open door to us. Yeah.
That's really encouraging, because I mean, at the moment in this area, and James is probably aware of this as well, the combined authority are really pushing social economy and social enterprise. So there's a real kind of focus on it, which is absolutely fantastic. And we're just kind of using that to kind of go, let's do this and let's really make this make a difference doing that.
Absolutely. And I think just the encouragement to think big. There are a number of people around who can help you think through how you approach doing a theory of change, how you approach understanding the needs in your community, how you approach building a social impact fund for your region, how you structure a program, including incubation, acceleration, and growth of social enterprises. You know, there are a number of people around now who can really help in that process. And I think, you know, that certainly when at the Gather conference in June, where we have a whole stream on social enterprises, then we'll be looking at all those different elements and hopefully giving you some tools and techniques to use to be able to do that, but also introducing you to other people who are involved in this space. I mean, that's been one thing that's been great for me, is kind of as I've stepped into this space, you know, all kinds of people like Matt Parfit and co have started coming out of the who you didn't know existed and going, oh, actually there's a growing community here of people who are really involved in this space, and how do we encourage that? How do we support one another? How do we feed off one another with ideas and motivation and yeah, prayers?
That's fantastic. So you sold it for me, mate. So well done. So thanks a lot. Cheers.
James.
Yeah, just interested in this idea of gathering the ideas that people have and giving that chance to explore how that might sort of set up and how that scale up. But I wondered, first of all, what in your experience is the success rate of those? Is there a kind of a rule of thumb that you kind of, from your experience, to say, actually, you know, 1 in 3 is turned into a successful business? And the second part of the question is, how do you manage the relationships with those people who fail? And, you know, do they get a second chance? Do you work with them into sort of looking at the second, and third and fourth ideas after that?
Mm-hmm. So in terms of the boot camps, it's open for people to come back as many times as they want with ideas. Okay. Some of the ideas are inherently less well formed. Okay. So interestingly, in you know, the incubator days in business, we'd be looking for a, you know, 50% plus success rate on businesses that went into incubation, but we recognize that there would be a 50% failure rate as well. That's just the nature of it at an incubation stage. Here with a boot camp, you're way before that. Yeah. So actually your idea generation, you're encouraging people, you're giving them small startup grants, you're walking alongside them, but actually the success is being kind of proved to be your ability to walk long term with people through the ideas. Yeah, so to not only do boot camps, but to have incubators and accelerators and then growth. And I think some of that can be done through signposting. Some of it needs to be specialist support alongside social enterprises. Sam?
Hi. So my question's around, so first of all, I love the idea of social enterprise. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Another model that can be used is taking existing businesses and going down the B Corp route and getting
Yeah.
that kind of accreditation. Have you got any experience or great stories of how we've managed to equip existing business owners to transition their models rather than starting from scratch all the time?
I don't. I know several businesses that have, but I don't have experience with that myself. Does anybody in the room have experience with that? Helen?
Hi. So B Corps are not social enterprises by strict definition, as in strict definition is that the social purpose is written into the articles of the organization and that they trade to bring in income. But B Corps are a good thing. That they're businesses who are saying, as well as doing their business, they're going to do this good in the community. And I believe the process of going through to become a B Corp is very valuable. It's very valuable. But you wouldn't officially, with definition, be a social enterprise at the end of that.
Yeah.
But you would be doing a good thing.
Yeah, so I totally get it's different from social enterprise. I suppose my reason for asking the question is my husband has just taken his business through that process and got accreditation and found that it's changed the whole ethos of the company, the values that they go down. So it really feels much more like a kingdom enterprise, but it was a business that was already really well established. And so you don't have all the risk that comes with pioneering something from scratch. So I suppose my question to the group is, I wonder if it's worth, just like we've had a session here today on social enterprise, whether understanding more about B Corp and equipping our church members who are already in business to kind of take their businesses through that process would also be a valuable exercise.
Yeah, really, really good point, Sam. And I know several people who've been through that exercise. So Mark, if you want to follow up on that, we can kind of, and it sounds like your husband, Sam, would be a good person as well to speak about it as well, which is great.
Great work, thank you. And it's just been a thrill to collect people to have such a in-depth conversation. Special thanks to Simon and to Matt, who's now left us. You really helped us understand more about what social enterprise is. It's been inspiring to see the practice from Matt's examples, and also inspiring to understand how to build a citywide approach, thinking about the ecosystems that support social enterprise. So thank you again very much, Simon, and to all that have contributed in this session.